It was a Tuesday night like any other, until the moment he walked in, and the quiet screamed. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It pressed in, thick and heavy, a tangible thing that seemed to watch from the corners of the meticulously kept living room. Usually, the evening hum of the refrigerator was a comforting drone, the scent of lavender from the diffuser a gentle balm against the day's small stresses. Tonight, the hum felt like a low growl, the lavender cloying, almost funereal. I sat curled on the couch, the weight of the book in my lap suddenly immense, its words blurring into meaningless symbols. A strange, formless anxiety had been coiling in my gut for the past hour, a premonition I couldn't shake, like the air tightening before a violent storm. Our home, usually a sanctuary, felt charged with an unseen current, waiting. And then the waiting was over. He walked in. James. My stepson. 18 years old, a man-child already dwarfing me at 6'2", usually carrying himself with that effortless, almost infuriating, quiet confidence that could make you forget the scared kid still lurking beneath the surface. He was all sharp angles and burgeoning strength, a confusing mix of vulnerability and swagger that had always drawn my eye, perhaps more than it should have. But tonight, the swagger was gone. Obliterated. He didn't stride in, he shuffled, dragging his feet as if wading through mud. His shoulders, normally broad and straight, were hunched forward, a desperate, unconscious attempt to shrink his imposing frame, to disappear into the expensive hoodie pulled low over his brow. That dark, perpetually messy hair, the kind girls probably sighed over, fell heavy into his eyes, curtaining his expression. Hands were shoved deep, violently deep, into his pockets, knuckles likely white. His gaze wasn't merely avoidant, it darted, frantic and hunted, scanning the room, the familiar lamp, the patterned rug, the photos on the mantelpiece, before crashing onto the floorboards as if seeking refuge there. Hey, he managed, but the word was a ghost, a frayed whisper swallowed by the oppressive quiet. It wasn't his voice. Not the resonant baritone that had deepened almost overnight last year, the one that sometimes startled me with its maturity. This was the thin, uncertain sound of a much younger boy, lost and terrified. My breath caught. I lowered the book, setting it aside with exaggerated care, my movements feeling slow, robotic. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. The premonition solidified, sharp and cold. Something was terribly wrong. Hey, James, I replied, forcing a lightness I didn't feel into my tone, a practiced maternal calm that felt like a cheap costume. What's up? He didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, rooted to the spot just inside the doorway, shifting his weight from one sneakered foot to the other in a restless, agonizing rhythm. The air crackled with unspoken words, with a tension so thick I could almost taste its metallic tang. I saw it then, a faint, almost imperceptible tremble in his hand as he briefly pulled it from his pocket before shoving it back in. And in the split second his gaze flickered upwards before diving back down, I caught a shadow in his eyes, a depth of fear I'd never witnessed in him before, not even during the worst of his parents' divorce years ago. This carefully constructed world we'd built, Emily and James, stepmother and stepson, confidant and troubled teen, it was founded on a bedrock of trust. A trust one had meticulously nurtured, brick by painful brick, over the years since marrying his father. I was the safe harbor, the one he came to when the waters got rough, the one who didn't judge, who just listened. It was a role I cherished, a connection that felt vital and real in the often sterile landscape of blended family dynamics. But looking at him now, seeing the raw panic barely contained beneath that hoodie, I felt the bedrock shift. This trust, so painstakingly built, felt suddenly, terrifyingly fragile. Whatever storm had broken over him, I had a sinking feeling it was about to test the very foundations of our relationship, perhaps shatter them completely. He started, then stopped, swallowing hard. The sound echoed in the stillness. He ran a hand through his already chaotic hair, a gesture of pure distress. I need to talk to you about something. My carefully arranged composure threatened to crack. I wanted to rush to him, wrap him in a hug, demand to know who or what had put that look in his eyes. But instinct, honed over years of navigating teenage minefields, held me back. Push too hard and he'd bolt. I patted the spot on the couch beside me, forcing a gentle smile. Of course. Anything. Come sit down. My voice was steady, a lifeline thrown across the tense space between us. He hesitated. A long, agonizing pause where the refrigerator's hum seemed to mock the silence. Then, instead of joining me on the couch, the place where countless conversations, secrets, and anxieties had been shared, he moved towards the armchair across from me. Sinking into it heavily, creating a physical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm that had suddenly yawned open. He folded in on himself, elbows on knees, head bowed, presenting me with the top of his dark head. The silence stretched again, taut and unbearable. The storm hadn't just arrived, it was already raging inside him, and I was standing on the shore, bracing for the impact, terrified of what horrors the tide would bring. The carefully curated peace of the evening had irrevocably shattered, replaced by a chilling foreboding. This conversation, I knew with dreadful certainty, would change everything. The silence stretched, thin and brittle, threatening to snap under the weight of his unspoken burden. The air in the room felt heavy, charged like before a lightning strike, the comforting lavender scent now utterly failing to mask the acrid smell of fear emanating from the young man hunched in the armchair across from me. My own heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, echoing the tremor I'd seen in his hand. He had sought me out, crossing the threshold into the living room like a supplicant entering a temple, seeking sanctuary or perhaps absolution. And I, the designated high priestess of his adolescent turmoil, waited, every nerve ending alight with a tense anticipation that was equal parts maternal concern and something else, something darker and more complex I refused to name. Finally, he dragged the words out, pulling them from some deep, tormented place within him. It's about. His voice cracked, fraying at the edges. He swallowed hard, the sound painfully loud in the quiet room. About my girlfriend. He couldn't meet my eyes, his gaze welded to the intricate pattern of the rug, as if the swirling lines held the answers he couldn't find. We've been talking about, you know. His voice dropped to a near whisper, thick with a mortifying embarrassment that stained his cheeks a deep, burning crimson. Doing it. Doing it. The euphemism hung in the air, ridiculously inadequate for the seismic shift it represented in his young life, the threshold he was terrified to cross. I nodded slowly, meticulously keeping my expression neutral, attentive, a mask of calm composure I had perfected over years of dealing with teenage angst, his friends, the echoes of my own long-buried past. Inside, however, a strange maelstrom swirled. There was the expected wave of empathy, the maternal ache for his vulnerability. But beneath it, colder and sharper, was a flicker of something possessive, an almost territorial awareness that this conversation, this intimacy, was happening with me, not his father, not his friends, not even the girl herself. And beneath that, deeper still, was a disconcerting tremor of awareness. An awareness of him not just as the boy I'd helped raise, but as a young man grappling with the potent, confusing urges of burgeoning sexuality. It was unsettling, a dangerous current pulling beneath the surface of my carefully maintained calm. Okay, I said, my voice deliberately soft, measured. I had always cultivated this sanctuary for him, a space where no topic was too taboo, no fear too irrational. Our bond was built on this implicit promise, you can tell me anything. And he had. Countless times. Worries about grades, fights with friends, anxieties about his father's expectations. But this felt different. Heavier. Fraught with a significance that made the air vibrate. What are you worried about? He finally risked a glance upwards, his dark eyes clouded with a misery that seemed disproportionate to the situation, though I knew for him, it was everything. The flush on his cheeks deepened. I don't know, he mumbled, looking away again almost immediately. I mean, I've never done it before. The admission was raw, painful. I just want to make sure I don't mess it up. He wrung his hands together, his knuckles white. Like, really mess it up, Emily. A soft smile touched my lips, purely reflexive, the maternal instinct kicking in. My heart swelled with a confusing mix of affection and something akin to pity for the terrified young man drowning in insecurity. "James," I began, leaning forward slightly, trying to bridge the physical distance he had created, my tone deliberately light but firm. "It's completely normal to feel nervous about your first time. Absolutely everyone does." I paused, choosing my words carefully, delivering the standard, sensible advice. "But the most important thing, truly the most important thing, is to communicate with your partner. Your girlfriend." The word felt strange on my tongue, slightly foreign. "Make sure you're both on the same page, that you both want this equally. And don't rush anything. It's not a performance, it's not about getting it right on the first try." Was my voice too calm? Too detached? Was I merely reciting lines learned from parenting books and daytime talk shows, or was there a subtle intensity coloring my words, a hidden layer of meaning only I could decipher? "It's about being present, connecting, and being respectful of each other's feelings and boundaries." He nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration as he absorbed my words, but the storm in his eyes hadn't subsided. If anything, it seemed to gather force. "But what if?" He hesitated, the fear palpable now, twisting his features. "What if she doesn't like it?" The question was laced with a profound dread, the ultimate teenage nightmare. Or I do something wrong. Something stupid." He ran a hand through his hair again, leaving it even more disheveled, a mirror of his internal chaos. "What if I'm just bad at it?" This raw vulnerability struck a chord deep within me. I leaned forward further, closing the distance between us slightly more, resting my hand briefly on the armrest near his clenched fist, though not touching him. My tone softened, becoming warmer, more intimate, a deliberate attempt to soothe the raw edges of his fear. "James, listen to me. It's completely natural to feel self-conscious, especially the first time. But remember, this is about both of you. It's a shared experience." I held his gaze, willing him to believe me. "Talk to her. Ask her what she likes, what she's comfortable with. Tell her what you like, what you're nervous about. Don't be afraid to ask questions, even while it's happening. And if something doesn't feel right, for either of you, it is absolutely okay to stop. Anytime. No questions asked." I emphasized the last part. "The most important thing, the only thing that matters, is that you're both comfortable, feeling safe, and hopefully, enjoying yourselves." He let out a long, shuddering breath he didn't seem to realize he'd been holding. The tension in his shoulders eased, just a fraction, but it was noticeable. "Thanks, Emily." A small, hesitant smile finally touched the corners of his lips, a flicker of his usual self returning. I want it to be special for her, you know. Really special." "I know," I said, my own smile genuine this time, touched by his thoughtfulness, by the inherent sweetness buried beneath the bravado he usually wore. "And the fact that you care so much about that already shows you're on the right track. You have a good heart, James." I paused, letting the warmth settle between us. "Just be yourself. Be present, be kind, be communicative. That's all anyone can ask for. That's all she needs." He nodded again, the furrow in his brow smoothing out slightly. "Thanks," he repeated, his voice stronger now, less frayed. That helps. A lot." "Anytime," I replied, my heart feeling full, yet strangely heavy. The sanctuary had held. The immediate crisis seemed averted. "And remember," I added, making my voice as open and non-judgmental as possible, reinforcing the foundation of our trust, unaware of the treacherous ground it would soon cover, "you can always come to me if you have more questions. Or worries. Anything. No judgment, okay? Ever." James chuckled softly, a genuine sound this time, and the last vestiges of tension seemed to drain from his shoulders. He finally looked relaxed, almost boyish again. "Okay," he said, the small smile widening slightly. I'll keep that in mind. He lingered for another moment, the heavy silence replaced by a more comfortable quiet. Then, with another mumbled thanks, he pushed himself up from the armchair and shuffled out of the room, heading down the hallway towards his bedroom. The soft click of his door closing echoed in the renewed stillness. I sat there for a long time after he left, the book forgotten in my lap, the lamplight casting long shadows. The mix of emotions James had stirred in me was potent and confusing. Pride in the considerate young man he was becoming. Nostalgia for the little boy lost somewhere inside the towering frame. Gratitude for the unique, precious bond we shared. But underneath it all, a low, electric hum persisted. An unsettling awareness. The image of his flushed cheeks, his tormented eyes, the raw vulnerability of his confession, it lingered, charged with an energy I couldn't yet comprehend, a dangerous seed planted in the quiet darkness of my own complicated heart, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. The air still felt thick, not with his fear anymore, but with something else, something sparked between us, something unspoken and potentially perilous.